our work in this program is divided into 3 stages. The first one being the prepare and launch stage. So in the next 20 minutes or so, I'm going to share with you, well, I guess let me back up and say, the goal of what I'm going to share right now is not to walk you through like all of the details that you would need to do the prepare and launch stage, just because it would be too much for like this time and overwhelming, I think. But the goal is to go over kind of each of the individual pieces that go in this stage. So the different types of meetings, as well as the type of content that we have to support you in doing the work for each of these meetings. So in doing that, I'll share some resources. I'm going to go a little bit in depth about building a team to do this work and effective ways that we found in working with opioid improvement teams. And then related to that, we're also going to spend a little bit of time together discussing your experiences working with improvement teams. And then also some of the homework that you guys have had over the past couple weeks has been reading about these processes. And so I would love to, in that, as we get there, hear from you about what your impressions were from some of that. And then I'm going to briefly talk about facilitating in-depth assessments, but I think that this is going to be something that my colleague Brooke talks a little bit more about later today, but it does come in at this stage. So that's our flow for the next 20 minutes. In our experience working with clinics doing this work, this stage does take anywhere from 3 to 6 months pretty typically. So this is something that I would think of it as building a good foundation to do the work, that if you're kind of rushing through things and not getting people on board, it's just going to make it a little bit harder to do the work later. And so that's why I think our whole team would encourage you to not rush through this stage, and it's okay if it does take a little bit longer to do this work in this stage. So the first thing that you as a practice facilitator are going to do, and I realize that for some of you all, this might be slightly different because you are working within your existing organization, but if you are working outside of your organization, the first thing that we do is a leadership commitment meeting. And so the idea here is the facilitator is presenting the project or the program to usually leadership at a clinic or at an organization to just share what is the overall purpose, what is the process, what are kind of the things that can be anticipated in terms of work, as well as timeline of that work, and a chance to just talk about whether that sounds appealing to the clinic or a good fit for what they have the capacity to do at the moment. And then depending on how this conversation goes, it's a great chance to kind of talk about next steps. So whether that is maybe doing what we're sharing today and this whole series is kind of like the full process of the 6 building blocks program, or if they wanted to try and pull out like smaller things to do that are more focused on a certain topic. So I would say, and I'll show you this in a few minutes, we have a sample PowerPoint that you are welcome to use and build off of that we have used as a base for our leadership and commitment meetings when we're meeting with a new clinic. So hopefully that saves you some work, and you can just add and modify it for your organization and your plans. So after the leadership and commitment meeting, we have, and you'll see kind of in between all of these meetings, there's something that's called prep work. So basically what this means is we've prepared worksheets that you are able to send the folks that you are working with. That is kind of some of the things that you would like them to do between when you first meet and the next time you meet, and things that it would be helpful if they come to the meeting, as well as for you as the practice facilitator to be prepared to talk about. So for example, for this prep work after the leadership and commitment meeting would be sending the organization a worksheet that's about building the opioid improvement team. So examples of who might be a good fit on there and like the time commitments. So yeah. And then at we have 2 orientation and assessment meetings that happen before the kickoff. So at the first one, you may end up doing a little tiny bit of review, because this will be the first time that you as the practice facilitator may be meeting with the whole opioid improvement team. And so there will likely be some of the folks you already might have shared the program with at the leadership and commitment meeting, but there also may be some new folks who haven't really been onboarded. So you're going to want to do just like a brief overview of the program. And then in this meeting, you are also going to go through the first 3 building blocks and use this as an opportunity for conversation with the group to hear about, okay, what does leadership really want to accomplish in this work? The second building block, like, for example, do you all have policies that are applicable to long-term opioid prescribing? If so, where are they? Things like that. And so it's a chance for you to hear from the opioid improvement team, as well as them to hear from each other. And through that, you will get a sense of kind of the priorities for some of the work. So then, as I said before, in between each of the meetings, there's another worksheet that you're able to share at this point, and you can send it to them in between the meetings. The purpose of the second orientation and assessment meeting is to go over the second 3 building blocks to kind of hear about where they are at. And a really huge piece of this is also planning with the opioid improvement team for the kickoff event. And so the kickoff event is kind of a big celebration of, hey, we're going to start this work, and we have a lot of things for you that my colleague Brooke is going to talk to you about that whole process in a few minutes. So we won't dwell there. As Ashley alluded to when we were on the website, we do have a lot of resources. And so one of the things I would really remind you as the practice facilitator is there is a workbook that will guide you through this step by step. So as Ashley said, it has agendas for meetings. It has conversation prompts that you might want to use. It has a space for you to take notes about like each of the different things that might come up. So I think we already clicked on that, so we don't need to click on that right now. But I strongly want to encourage you as you start this work to open that, look at it in your binder, look at it on the website. It will be, I think, really supportive to you as you get started. The second item on here are the worksheets that I mentioned that you can share with the teams that you are working with. The third thing on here, I'm also not going to have you click on it right now, Ashley, but because I'm going to talk about it in just a minute with you all, but it's a couple page sheet that is about how to form an opioid improvement team that's going to be able to do effective work. So who should be on that team? What kind of goals should they have about frequency of meeting, things like that. That's just kind of a guide for you in supporting a team and doing this work. The fourth thing on here that actually I would love if you would click on it for just a second, the partnership and commitment letter. So basically this is something that is totally optional for you as a practice facilitator to use. But one of the reasons that I really like this is it is kind of a chance to make sure everybody that is going to start in on this process is on the same page in terms of their expectations around what kind of work they're going to do, and then what kind of support you as the practice facilitator are going to provide to that team. So don't think of it as like, it's not a contract, but it is just like a kind of a good tool to just make sure everyone is on the same page. And if Cher is not cooperating, it's okay, Ashley. I trust that you all will be able to go back and click on these things when you get there. But and then the fifth thing that was on that slide was the PowerPoint presentation that we have for you to start with when you're introducing this to new folks at the clinic. So just go ahead and build off of that existing resource. Don't recreate a wheel. I'm going to pause right there and just say because I'm going to switch gears a little bit and talk with you all about the opioid improvement teams and what we've seen in terms of successful roles and time and things like that. But before I do that, does anybody have any questions about just the content that are the high-level pieces of content for this stage of the work? I want to talk a little bit to you all about forming your opioid improvement teams. And so I think for those of you who are in clinics, maybe this is something that you can start to think about. So when Stroudwater is supporting you in doing this work, this is kind of going to be on your end at the clinic to bring together this group of people. So what I'm sharing here is what we have found to be successful makeups of an opioid improvement team. So a main person is somebody who is from that clinic or from the organization and really close with that clinic. That's going to be the QI project lead. And this person actually is the one that is probably the highest time commitment, at least to start with, because they're the person that's going to really kind of basically, for lack of a better description, they're gonna drive the work. So they might be the ones that are organizing meetings, working with the practice facilitator to get those on the schedule, and just helping to make sure that the work is moving forward. It is, I think, if possible, helpful for this person to have some experience doing quality improvement. But that being said, if they don't, I think that this is a chance for people to build skills, and that there will be support in learning quality improvement skills. Another crucial role is somebody who is a clinical champion. And so usually this is a MD, DO, PA, NP. It does range, but that's kind of usually who we've seen it as. And this is somebody who has interest in the topic, somebody who probably would be viewed as having some sway in the organization. So what we've seen is the person that's the clinical champion can often be the person that is almost the go-between between the people who are working on the opioid improvement team and maybe the rest of the clinic or the rest of the organization to share plans and help get some of that further input, and just make sure that this is on the radar of other clinicians and other leadership. The third one, and I would say I have seen this be pretty variable in terms of whether clinics have a tracking and monitoring lead, though it's really, really helpful if you do. So this might be somebody who is doing a lot of work with your EHR. This could be somebody who is just maybe not so much EHR, but more data for the broader organization. And maybe they work with multiple clinics on this role, just based on kind of how I've heard you talk about your organization. And the purpose of this is they are going to be the ones that would try and support the opioid improvement team when they're looking for information about, okay, what are our numbers on this right now? Do we have that information? Can we measure that? Excuse me. And so they would be gathering things and then sharing those data back with the opioid improvement team in support of doing the work. And then there's a group of other people who I would say, well, in my opinion, it's really important to have a medical assistant, nurse, on this team, because in team-based care, the medical assistant or the nurse are often folks who are doing a lot of this work, especially when you are changing some workflows around what kind of assessments you're going to do with patients, or making sure a patient agreement is signed. So I would really strongly encourage you to make sure that there is representation from those groups on your opioid improvement team. If you have somebody that's more social worker, behavioral health, that can be really amazing, but not all of the clinics that I've worked with have had that opportunity. If you have a program that is providing medication treatment or office-based opioid therapy, it can be, I think, really valuable to just make sure there's some synergy between the work that you're doing and the work that they're doing. I mean, not exactly the same, but there's definitely a fair amount of overlap. And one other thing that you can consider is maybe if you have a patient who is very much impacted by this work, inviting them to be a part of your opioid improvement team to provide input. So, but again, all of these on this last line are optional, but some of them I would recommend kind of with more urgency than others.